My name is Jeff Laber. I'm from analyst firm CCS Insight, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's proceedings. So we've got a phenomenal session for you tonight over the next hour, in what should be a very lively, very exciting session, focused very much on the new emerging software platforms that are delivering a lot of fresh innovation in our space today, and obviously forming a very big theme for Mobile World Congress this week. So I'll be joined for the panel discussion today by three panelists. We have Mitchell Baker, co-founder and chair of Mozilla. We have Mark Shuttleworth, founder of Canonical and Ubuntu. And we have Mark Dillon, co-founder and CEO of Jolla. So the format for the evening it's going to be an hour panel session, but we will start off with a few introductory remarks, and towards the end of the session there'll be an opportunity for audience Q&A. But before we get to that, I'm delighted to invite up on stage Mitchell Baker, the co-founder and chair of Mozilla, to provide an introduction to the innovation that we're seeing with Firefox OS. Mitchell.
To get started here, I thought it would be useful to talk at first about the nature of innovation and what is really meaningful innovation here. Because we think a lot about innovation, and as a beginning, what is the kind of innovation that will create the most value for consumers, and what are the kinds of innovation that bring the most opportunity and value for the actors in the system? And so I posit that meaningful innovation has, in today's operating system and mobile ecosystem, has three key characteristics. First, it should create a unified platform. Meaningful innovation today is not creating more separate software stacks. Second, meaningful innovation should create a level playing field. We should be maximizing opportunity for competition, innovation, choice across the layers of the ecosystem. And third, meaningful innovation needs a new model of collaboration for how developers, operators, handset manufacturers, software providers interact with consumers to provide maximum value. So I'll talk a little bit about the three of those, a little bit of how we've approached it, and I hope that will set the stage for the discussions of innovation that will follow in the coming hour. A unified platform. The first idea is that meaningful innovation should create a single platform in which we all interact. That's a daunting task if you start from scratch. And so in Firefox OS, we're not trying to create a new third platform. We have the unified platform, and that is the web. That's been the platform for the last decades of computing environment. It provides the ability for anyone with any kind of device to connect, and it provides for shared control and development of the ecosystem. Now, it may seem that the web is not particularly relevant to the mobile environment, but I think that is not the case. You know, the web is based on standards and interoperability, and we have come to expect that, so that content is available to all across all devices. But that was not always assured in the web. And in the middle era, the web had a single unified software stack, convenient, fit together. Parts of it were high quality. At one time, even Internet Explorer was an innovative, high quality piece of software. But over time, it deteriorated, and we ended up with the web that was not standards-based, with content that was not available to you on some devices, and with a range of business models and opportunities that were limited by the business plans of a large organization. And so that's what we set out to remedy with Firefox. And we set out to do a few things. First of all, we focused on standards. We started the HTML5 working group in 2003 when we formed the foundation, and we made a consistent, concerted effort to bring standards back into the environment. That involved the standards bodies themselves. It involved building a product that actually responded to standards, and it involved evangelism and working with content groups. So when we look at the mobile environment last year, and we thought about what kind of innovation is really meaningful, we thought, first of all, the unified platform must be interoperable. It should be standards-based. And at the time, the web did not have all of the capabilities needed for the mobile world. No one had spent the time or attention to say, what are the APIs needed to access all the device capabilities? It wasn't that the web couldn't, it was that no one had. And so we did, because meaningful innovation requires a single, unified, standards-based platform that we can access. And so by leading the standards process, we now have the set of APIs that are necessary for web technologies to be able to access all the devices, all the capabilities of a phone. And so that is a standard-based process because that is core to who we are and what we think is important and the kind of innovation that is really meaningful and provides lasting value. A second great need for really meaningful innovation is that we have a level playing field. So standards are good, interoperability are good, they're the foundation. But of course, there are business models and policies and working practices that sit above those, and those too can fragment a platform. And today we see that again. We see that you choose a platform to develop on, you must develop in multiple different cases, and we see that the choice of a device dictates a fair number of other decisions. So if I'm a consumer and I buy a particular device, it will determine services available to me. It will determine, for example, how I pay for purchases, how I pay for apps. And as a consumer, I don't have any choice in that. I may not have a credit card. I may not like the payment provider that comes with my phone, but that choice is made for me. As a consumer, I have no direct access or ability to access any alternative. And as a service provider, whether you're a network operator or a service provider of another sort, you don't have access to consumers either. And so we don't have a level playing field. The same is true of content. When I purchase a device, it has a big impact on the content that's available to me, and it affects the developers. My choice of device affects the business and monetization policy of software and service providers. And so that's an integration that may be convenient and elegant. It may be a good alternative, but it is a disaster as the only alternative. And so the meaningful innovation is to provide as an alternative this level playing field across the horizontal layers. And so with Firefox OS, we have consciously built those options into the system. We're not an integrated stack provider. We're not a giant service provider. We don't aim to be that. We don't aim to compete. We aim to provide a core service that, or a core platform that other services can be made available, and a way for consumers to actually find more than one choice. And that brings us to actually how we work and how we operate. Because we're familiar with hierarchical models, and we're familiar with fragmented or different integrated stacks that will fight among each other and will seek to be first or second or third. We need a model for collaboration for the industry that allows the level playing field and the unified platform to be developed. And that model requires, well, we have some experience in doing that. And what we've seen is that model requires a few things. It is not a consortium. That collaboration model requires a key product focus with leadership. Leadership with a product focus and clear decision making. So we seek to build collaboration, and to use Mozilla as an example, we build collaboration into Firefox OS and to how we work with our partners, and we hope that others learn from us and do as well. We won't be perfect, but we are learning in this area. We are pioneers in this area, and we seek to build this in a public manner where our partners are engaged as decision makers so that we can all take those learnings and move the industry forward. Our examples and our goals for collaboration are to embody them ourselves and to bring new principles to how we can move the industry forward together and how we improve life for consumers together. And so the model for collaboration that we've been perfecting for the last 15 years has been where we define the core that's really important to us. In our case, that starts with the centrality of the user. Mozilla is a brand about user control and user sovereignty. And so in the collaboration space where we participate, and particularly where we lead, we always hold that as central. Our users must trust us, and that trust must be warranted. And we won't collaborate in anything that we feel gets in the way of that. And we also lead in creating a neutral space where competitors can come together and work together and sort out what's the common nucleus that the industry needs and where do individual competitors step aside and do different things. So we build for potential competitors a place to have technical and business decisions which has a clear interface between this is the shared commons of code and practices that as a group we move forward with. And here's the interface where you are welcome and encouraged to go out and compete or do something different, plus always the ability to take a copy of the entire thing and go off and lead your own path. One of the keys that has been effective for Mozilla at keeping us the central middle ground is that our code is open, our roadmaps are open, our discussions are open, our leadership is open, and you are always welcome to go off and lead differently. That hasn't happened. That, I think, is a mark to the quality of the people across Mozilla leadership. But it is an organizational way to make sure that we hold the center for collaboration and that we are not promoting only our own version of innovation. And so in Firefox OS, you'll find, for example, that our early partners, such as Telefonica and Deutsche Telekom, have already contributed not just code, but product leadership and design, not in a committee, not in a separate measure where we cobble things together, but as contributors who earn through their work and merit and leadership and skill, authority and reputation and decision making. And that's the heart of the open source aspect of Mozilla that we bring forward. And we combine that with a deep pragmatism about business and business needs. We have been in the mixed space of open source plus pragmatic business needs for a long time. And so we build clear interfaces between this is public, this is open, your business models, you keep whatever you want to yourself, but this is the space. If you work in this space, it must be open. And that space is the center. So that space is the code that we consider part of the core and the working methods around it. And so that is a model of collaboration which has served us well, which if you look at our current products and our marketplace idea and the merging of web technologies and apps and web content, which you can find and see and feel, I think you'll find that the mixture of pragmatic goals, product goals, and how we collaborate may have something useful. We certainly don't think that we have all the answers. We are one of a few different projects, but we're pretty sure that we have something to offer that's worthwhile in our product, of course, because we can see the reception to that, and also in the other meaningful aspects of how we work together as a group that's moving the entire mobile ecosystem forward. So thank you.
Mitchell, thank you very much. If the panelists would all like to join me on stage, so Mitchell Baker, if you'd like to take a seat, Mark Dillon from Jolla, and Mark Shuttleworth from Canonical. And Mark, if you'd, once you've taken a seat, perhaps if you'd just like to give a brief introduction to Canonical and obviously Ubuntu specifically.
Sure, thank you, and thank you, Mitchell, for sort of setting the scene for the dramatic changes and challenges that are facing the industry today. I think the core question many operators and manufacturers are confronted with at the moment is the nature of the ecosystem and the changes that they want to see created in that ecosystem, and specifically creating some more diversity in the ecosystem. For us, the number one challenge, the core question really, is the consumer question. We're in a world today where consumers have a great deal of say in what they use and why they use it. And so for us, the number one issue really is the user experience. Is this a product that will fly off the shelves? Is this a product that people will share with each other and gleefully dive into, so that they embrace that diversity rather than having it thrust upon them? So I wanted to share with you very briefly a quick taste of some of the innovation that we hope to bring to this market in the coming months. So with a little bit of luck, we should get a taste of that here. So when we set out to create that, we wanted to make something that was really beautiful, really fresh, really different. Something that wouldn't just challenge Android, but would challenge Apple and perhaps set the pace for the next 5 years of user experience in mobile. And perhaps the most difficult thing we wanted to do was we said the future of mobile is not just phones. It's phones and tablets and PCs and connected smart TVs. So we set out to create a great set of user experiences. And so I want to show you this convergence story in action. Here's the tablet member of the same family. So user experience is really amazing, or is really critical, and it is possible to bring real innovation to user experience. We have not seen what's the limits of what's possible in touch and in mobile today. And convergence is really important because physically these devices are converging. And Moore's law is bringing us into a world where the processing power of these devices is converging. Today we work with HP, Lenovo, Dell, Asus, Acer to ship millions of PCs globally. And we are very conscious of the fact that in future it's going to be very hard to tell the difference between what's inside a PC and what's inside a mobile phone. The other half of the story that's really important is what the enterprise wants. So consumers are important. The enterprise is looking for a different set of values. And that primarily is security. Being built on Linux and having the full power of Linux at our disposal allows us to give a really great security story to the enterprises. There are millions of PCs in enterprises today running this platform, and their ability to use the same tools to manage it and have the same confidence in the security for medical, financial, government, military kinds of applications is really important. For industry, the key question always is differentiation, customization, and the ability to drive increased margin and revenue without fragmenting the platform. And so our approach there is to support industry in delivering differentiation focused on revenue for content, for services, while still creating a platform that expands for developers. It's important that every single device that joins the ecosystem is additive to that platform to build a real addressable market for developers, to create real diversity in the market. And we think it's important to embrace all kinds of developers. HTML5 is the future. HTML5 is a critically important platform for developers. It's a unifying force. It is, unfortunately, the lowest common denominator for developers. So it's the appropriate platform for developers who are targeting, want to develop once for all platforms. And so we have to do a first-class job of HTML5, and we're inspired by the leadership that Mozilla and Firefox have set. But it's important to be compatible with iOS and Android. And it's important to start from that point, so we will start from that point with WebKit, and we'd like to collaborate with Mozilla to move the center of gravity of the HTML5 ecosystem over time away from one code base in WebKit towards the W3C and open standards. It's also important to help developers who have made existing investments. So we'll make it easy for Android developers to bring their apps to Ubuntu. Many Android developers develop on Ubuntu today. It's extremely popular. And Android was designed to be portable, and so we'll use that to bring Android applications very easily to Ubuntu. It's also very easy to bring BlackBerry applications, which is important for security-oriented enterprise environments. And so there are already many blog posts about how easy it is to bring BlackBerry Touch applications to Ubuntu. And lastly, we think it's really important for games developers to be able to target a platform. And many of the games engines are targeting Ubuntu now. So it's a one-button press for the developer to target iOS. There's another button for Android and a third button for Ubuntu. So that there's no silver bullet for developers. There's no silver bullet for the app ecosystem. It really involves a complicated strategy, migrating people towards a new platform from the place that they're essentially most comfortable coming from. The last piece of the puzzle, I think, is the cloud. And today's modern application architecture is a beautiful front-end application backed by computing in the cloud. And we're fortunate that Ubuntu is, in many senses, the operating system for cloud computing. We're the #1 guest OS on Amazon, the #1 Linux on the Microsoft cloud, and the #1 Linux inside the OpenStack ecosystem as well. So that gives developers a really unique opportunity to have a common platform for both the front end and the heart, the engine room that will typically be running in the cloud. So these are core elements of innovation and core aspects of driving change in an industry that is calling out for it.
Mark, thank you very much. Thanks for the insights on the innovation we're seeing from Ubuntu. Mark, can I turn it to you? What's the ethos behind Jolla and obviously specifically Sailfish? And what are we seeing from, or what can we expect to see from Sailfish with regards to innovation in the coming months?
So first off, I'm really happy to see so much synergy here. So we're at a crossroads in mobile, and everybody's talking about concern about innovation, or is there innovation left? And really what we're looking at is we're at a crossroads, and it's either going nowhere, the status quo, or there's three excellent choices for diversity that are sitting on the stage here. And I was thinking about it. There was some concern before we got up here that, is this going to turn into some kind of competition? And I realized that if we are in competition, then we've all already won. Because that's really what is happening about creating diversity from the existing walled gardens and the existing couple of ecosystems that everyone is talking about. It's really what we're all here looking for and what we're all trying to do. HTML5 is a great solution. Being able to execute applications from other ecosystems is like one of the things that we've been looking at. So being able to make sure that there's diversity and choice. So standards and all of these kinds of things are great, but to me it's like diversity is the thing that creates innovation. So like at Jolla, we have 16 countries at the moment that are represented by the 60 employee base that we're creating a mobile device with. And bringing together different thoughts, different views, different viewpoints is what innovation really is about, because it's about taking multiple views, multiple ideas, and then something new starts to come from that. So I think there's a huge amount of synergy in what we're doing here. And I think that creating the diversity, even the three choices that we have here on the stage, consumers are going to start to understand that they have had no choice. They've had a couple of choices, and now it's almost no choice for them. They're used to one or they're used to the other. So now they're going to start to understand that they have a choice, and they're going to start looking for other choices. And then actually it comes down to a meritocracy, which is I think something that's very important to all three of us here on the stage, that they will have a choice to look, and they will say, this is the one that resonates for me, or this is the user experience. We're spending a huge amount of energy on user experience as well, and I saw the things that Ubuntu had today, and it's we're thinking a lot of similar things but doing them in different ways. So, but it's going to come down to people are going to want to find something that resonates for them, and if they don't have the choice, if they don't see that there is different choices, then they can't buy something that's not offered to them. So I think it's a really good start that we have here, and we're all heading in similar directions but different ways, and providing choice and diversity for consumers is always really good, and they don't really have it at the moment.
Thank you very much. So maybe we could put the discussions and the opening introductions into some context in terms of where the market is, because I think if we look at the mobile landscape today, I think it's fair to say it faces some pretty fundamental challenges. I think we'd all agree on that. It may well be a smartphone market that's going to see well in the region of 930 million units shipped this year, and that's a fundamental, huge opportunity. But if we look at the challenges specifically to carriers who are heavily reliant on just two software platforms, for manufacturers, for whom the vast majority of manufacturers that are attending this conference this week, they're not currently profitable. Apple and Samsung are taking a disproportionate amount of that value. And then if we look at it from a consumer's perspective, you've got two offerings in Android and iOS, which are about a lock-in to a specific content and application ecosystem. So if we consider all those challenges and look at it holistically in that respect, what is it that each of your offerings, and obviously the innovation that you've talked about today, what is it that they individually offer that addresses the challenges for consumers, carriers, and the manufacturers?
Well, Jeff, differentiation is one of the biggest things here. So we need to provide choice. People can only buy what's offered to them, and right now it's really stuck. So this is one of the big things. The diversity of choice. Like we're hosting three application ecosystems, if you will, on Sailfish. So there's HTML5 apps, there's Qt apps, which also Ubuntu is doing. And we also have the native Migo applications, and we're actually able to do all of these things already. So this is one of the keys to providing diversity. It's like allowing people to get out of the walled gardens that have been created already, because now everybody's getting squeezed. You build up a walled garden and you create a great business model. It stops innovation, and then it stops choice for consumers, and then it creates the complete inability to get outside of that and to start new business models and do different things, which is actually what we're all here to talk about. So enabling new business models.
And Mitchell, if we look specifically at Firefox OS, I mean, obviously, Firefox has got a lot of carrier partners on board now. You've got a distinct and very different proposition for consumers. You know, it's not about a content lock-in, but now how does that create consumer pull? Do you think that is the end consumer going to see the innovation and the offering that Firefox brings to the market?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the pieces that Mozilla, I think, is unique about is our real focus on the universality of the platform and the web. So, for example, today we think that apps are apps and the webs are the web, and you get to the web through the browser on your phone, maybe, sometimes, ever. But there is an immense amount of content and value out there, and an immense amount of local content in areas that don't make sense in a global marketplace. And so the ability to merge those seamlessly for the consumer, so that a consumer, particularly, we'll say a consumer for the first markets of Firefox, which are feature phone owners moving to smartphones for the first time. So how actually do you get the range of content? There's some global apps that everybody will want. You can name the 20 or the 30 or the 50 that you use that need to be available. And there's a lot of local content. Like what's really important to a 15-year-old girl in Nigeria may not be what's trending on the Apple iStore. Right? And so there's a range of lifestyle and content and local content that doesn't necessarily resonate with us here, but by merging the app experience and the ability to do deep search within apps and to experience the content of the web in an app-like way and make use of all that's there, we bring a whole range of content, experience, local ability, ease of development to a set of consumers who haven't had that before.
And Mark, does Ubuntu, do you see that in a similar fashion? Is it, or is, now given your heritage on the PC and the fact that you've got a proposition that's very much about a multi-screen offering, is that something that you think consumers are going to value? Do you see the nature of computing and how consumers use phones and tablets and TV, do you see those converging and changing?
Yeah, I think the two challenges that you highlighted, the sort of sterility of the software landscape and the challenges facing the manufacturing hardware landscape, I think those two problems are deeply interlinked. It is very difficult to differentiate if effectively everyone's running the same software. And it's really difficult to innovate if innovation has to fit into the framework that's being specified by players that will drive that innovation at their own pace. So, for example, today we feel that the computing capability of modern mobile devices has way exceeded the needs of Android. But it's very difficult to justify to consumers that they should buy some of those incredible devices just because you can run a perfectly good Android experience with a mediocre device. Yeah. So the opportunity to bring devices to market that really give consumers a fresh taste of what's possible, a single device that can become a tablet, or become a PC, can become a media center. That's the sort of innovation that we think will reignite sales for manufacturers. Will create winners and losers, which is always exciting. Those that take risks should be rewarded for those risks. And introducing a new platform is a substantial commitment for any alliance of institutions. So we think these two issues are deeply interrelated. We think the convergence story is critical. And we think making sure that the innovation that's being driven comes alive in consumers' hands is the key, because consumers don't want to be innovated on. They want to dive in and enjoy it, and getting all of those pieces right together is the goal.
I mean, in this respect, all three of you, perhaps unsurprisingly, given the HTML5 basis of a lot of the platforms that we're talking about here, you're all very much aligned. But if we look back prior to 2007, there was a huge amount of talk about the benefits of open source and open standards, and we saw a lot of initiatives that failed to come to pass. And in 2007, Apple came to the market and completely transformed the landscape, and that was with a very tightly controlled model coupled, around the device, the content, the service model, everything. So, what does that suggest? Do consumers not just want something that works in a very tightly controlled fashion that they can take and use and access content seamlessly, rather than having to trawl the web and find applications that may be distributed here, there, and everywhere?
Well, they realized that they're in people's pockets with the iPod. And then they said, okay, well, while we're in there, we should get some of the money from there. So let's start to sell the music. And then the same thing with the iPhone. It's like, well, okay, let's build our own garden and let's sell applications in there. And now we can create a whole new business model. And by the way, haha, Google, there goes your cloud. Now you're going to be chasing us and doing the same exact thing for all of this time. So it's really come to the point where it's closed so much from having just these two players who are doing just these couple of things, and created the need for the change that we're all up here to provide, and the ability to actually take those walls and tear them down and show that actually by working together and collaborating in new ways, then we're able to do new things together. So it's actually we've all gotten to this point now where the hardware is now becoming a commodity. Like Mark was saying, the only thing that they can differentiate on an Android device is the number of cores and how many megahertz. I have more megahertz, mine's bigger than yours, and then all of this kind of thing. And it's actually not even utilizing the capability of the devices. So like we're demoing on 3-year-old hardware the stuff that we have with Sailfish all of the time. And it's like we're going to have to slow it down to put it on the modern hardware that now that's the only selling point that they have left. So let's turn it back to something where the selling point is actually something that it actually enables something for the user and gives them something that actually adds value to their life, instead of just, okay, mine is bigger or has a different color. So, and what it's done is it's created a commodity everywhere. So to get a new application out, like we were talking about the local applications versus international, or what's trending in New York City. It's like what you have now is the hardware is a commodity because the software is all the same. The applications are becoming a commodity because you practically have to win the lottery in order to get a new application into a store with 600,000 or 800,000 applications and have somebody notice. And the operators are facing the same thing. They're getting squeezed into becoming only a bit pipe. So it's like the need for change and the need for innovation, and to say, we're not going to take this anymore. We're going to go a different place, and we're going to do something new.
Can I just pick up on one of those last points? Sorry, Mitchell, please, and we'll come back.
Okay. Innovation is hard. Like when you set out to actually be innovative and to do something creative and have a different vision and be able to execute on it and bring it to life and have a great product and a great user experience and a business model that works and that people notice and that you're successful, that is brutally hard. So I think it's not useful to wonder, can that only happen in an open source environment? Or, wow, it happened like it was Steve Jobs and he was very closed. Right? Brilliant and very closed. Do we know that those are related? Could he have been brilliant and open? Like, who knows? I mean, he was a human being. And so sometimes we will see innovations that come and are very closed and innovative, and sometimes we'll see them that are open and innovative. And so Apple did change the landscape. Great. That's a good thing, because it showed us new possibilities, but the set of possibilities that were innovative in 2007 are not the full answer for 2015 or 16. So yes, let's hope that Apple continues to be innovative, even in their very closed way, because those are new ideas. Like innovation is lifeblood. So the role that we're looking for is to say there are other kinds of innovations that have components that you in a single centralized mind didn't dream up one day. Right? And that these can be new and innovative in ways that are different and that can combine resources that aren't all mine. And so that's a category of innovation that's not exclusive to closed Apple model, but it's quite different, and the kinds of things that come out of it are really quite different. And so,
I certainly agree, but one of the challenges that we've seen in the past is that the collaboration ethos of open source, and the fact that, and particularly in the mobile context, when you have many contributors, tends to slow down time to market, slows down the commercialization process, and we've seen that with a number of different initiatives. You know, the wholesale applications community was a big theme that we talked about a year ago, 2 years ago, the Limo Foundation before that, and none of these really made the progress. So I suppose, Mark, if I can ask you first, what changes that with the open source model that Ubuntu is pursuing? And similarly, you know, interested in what Mozilla and Jolla specifically think of that.
Well, I think the really important thing is to connect the aspirations of industry with the aspirations of consumers. You know, what Apple did that was so wonderful was to create something that people just had to have. It was beautiful, it was powerful, it was exciting. And I think we won't see transformation in the industry. I don't think we'll see diversity in the industry until somebody else produces something new that has those characteristics. You know, if industry on its own lusts after openness, and we understand why, and for us, being open is profoundly important, right? Ubuntu is the largest open source project in the world. But at the same time, industry will tend, when it's working in consortium mode, will tend not to take difficult decisions. And so you mentioned Limo, there have been others, you know, time after time industry will try and form open consortiums. Yep. And what they lack is leadership and vision and the ability to take difficult decisions. So that's what we bring to Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an open ecosystem. There are many companies that participate. Our role is as steward of an open source project, but also as leader. Mitchell talked about leadership, and it really is very, very important. I think it is going to be possible. You saw some of the clarity and beauty and aesthetic and innovation in what we're bringing to market as a completely open platform. So I think it is possible to innovate and excite consumers and be open. And I think the market will decide in the next 18 months what they really want.
And Mitchell, what's your view on that?
I gave part of it, you know, earlier, but I would say the other part is, for some organizations, you're born in an open way that comes out of open source, and you understand it. But other organizations, you know, need to come to being open after they're formed. And I think that's true of many of the mobile industries that didn't grow from the ground up as open organizations or open source organizations. So there's a learning process there. And sometimes you learn better when you're under stress. But it's the nature of life. Like when you're comfortable, not much change occurs. Right? So now I think what we have are some examples of open source projects that are real open source projects with success and meritocracy and products behind them, with some experience to business. Remember, we're the first ones. I mean, this is very early. Yep. Plus a set of players for whom the current dynamics aren't working, as you outlined. And so the natural tendency has seemed to be to go to consortium, which clearly haven't worked. So I think that we may be in one of those states where having the existing players who've been successful at making exciting consumer experiences engage with an industry that clearly needs something different may be the time when we make some real progress. So
Mark, if I can just ask you, is it fair to say that the industry has learned the lessons from the Limo Foundation and a whole raft of other initiatives that have promised a lot and ultimately underdelivered?
Well, I knew the lesson a long time ago, so it's difficult to look at that. Our approach is to make a wonderful product, and we're working really hard to make software and hardware. You can create each of these with some level of difficulty and expertise. Putting the two together is really challenging to get them together and then take the raw materials and crank it up to a product. And fortunately, that's what we do. That's who we are. We've been doing this. We have like 600 years of product creation experience with 60 guys. So our approach is to lead by example in the open community as much as possible, and we're in a lot of different communities. We have a lot of shared code between the three of us. And lead by example and then get out a fantastic product. And that's really what starts to show that it is possible. And then, you know, one of the reasons that we're here is because of community. So we're all here because of community efforts. And when you lead by example and you hold to community values, then you get a following and you get support. And that's like where our key followers came from. So the movement goes on as the next set of followers involve the next set and involve the next set. And that's who our key early adopters are, and our key technology stylists, and the ones that are going to bring us all the success that is coming to us.
So one of the... Mark, please.
One of the great things about being open source is that it makes it much easier for us to collaborate. Right? So you will find that in a broad ecosystem there are different opinions about what's important, different lenses that we see things through. At the end of the day, though, the fact that you have 3 open source projects on the stage means that it's highly likely that innovation from different parts of that ecosystem can come together. And so we have a long history of collaborating together, Mozilla and Canonical and Ubuntu, and I'm sure you'll see some of that in the mobile ecosystem as well. So this isn't as binary an ecosystem as you traditionally would have in the purely closed environments.
Absolutely.
And one of the... Could I add one story to that?
Please do.
Which was the initial public description of Firefox OS, then by its engineering code name, boot to Gecko, appeared in a Mozilla news group. That was it. And it turns out that Telefonica had been thinking similar thoughts and read the news group, and so contacted us. And Telefonica has been a key partner in developing Firefox OS. Not just the particular apps for which they're the lead, but the design and the approach of this product. Not as a committee management piece, but key individuals at Telefonica who have earned their chops in what they're doing. And so that is an example of parts of the industry starting to change, something that would only have happened because we do have an open system.
Absolutely. And what we've talked a lot about here is obviously the consistent basis of all the software platforms that we're talking about, and that's HTML5. But if HTML5 is very much the talking point of the industry, it's the buzzword of Mobile World Congress, but is there not a danger that the bar has been set too high in terms of expectation, and that HTML5 ends up reiterating the doomed ethos that we saw with Java as this write once, run anywhere technology, run
to be honest,
time?
we hedged our bets. So we had Qt and Android applications and HTML5. And then we looked at it like that, but we're all in. I see this as a great opportunity to actually level the playing field. Was one of the key things that came up here. But the other way that we have to look at this is the ability to take the different ecosystems and provide some kind of synergy. So it's not mine or yours, but it's all of them. It sounds funny, but I meant it at the time. That somebody asked a few weeks ago, Mark, how many ecosystems do you see in a few years? I said, I don't know, but I think they should all run on Sailfish. And that's the way that we looked at it. It's like, well, why not take this openness and be able to do that? But on the topic of openness and collaboration and all of that, another thing that came to mind was, I think one of the reasons for our success was we put minimal constraints around developers. So this means that in order to, the ways of working and the ways of collaborating and the ways of organizing the work and all of this kind of thing, we did a very community spirit, which is like, okay, these are the things that we think are important, go work on it. And this is a very community kind of oriented thing that like what Mitchell was bringing up. These kinds of things only happen when you create an environment where people are free to try new things and innovate. And then somebody does something and maybe they even make a mistake and someone else says, hey, look, we can take this and we can do something. And then people get together, they get excited, they run off and they do it. And now you have a new innovation, you have a new application, you have a new operating system, you have a new browser, you have all kinds of new things.
Yeah.
So.
Mitchell, can HTML5 really deliver?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Java has a long and checkered history, if you want to use that, and never, and certainly the Sun community process. But HTML5 has delivered. The universal platform before the mobile environment is an HTML5 platform. So the idea that it must necessarily fragment, or that Java, which was never, that the experience of Java, which had technical problems and management problems and community problems and permission-related problems is an example from HTML5, I think is a pretty deep mismatch.
I guess our perspective on this is a little bit different. This is one of the areas where we do differ. For us, HTML5 is profoundly important. It is one leg of a very large and complex developer ecosystem. HTML5 is the domain of knowledge. And so there are huge classes of applications where it is about knowledge and content and information that I think HTML5 will dominate. And it's appropriate that those immediately be accessible across every platform. So there are large categories of applications for which HTML5 is the right tool set. And we need to do a great job of HTML5 along with all of the other platforms. But the domain of passion belongs to native applications. The domain of really rich user experiences, fast, fluid, sexy, lustful user experiences, that I think does belong to native applications today. It may be different in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. I think some of the key challenges, though, performance-oriented challenges, in the HTML5 world are not going to disappear in the short term. And so for us, therefore, it's really important to have a very beautiful, crafted, tight core set of native applications. The 5,000 most used applications, most personal, most intense applications, games, and the things that you want to really get the most out of. And then HTML5 provides this vast landscape of compatible as we move to a compatible ecosystem. And deep, thoughtful, knowledge-based applications.
Let me just ask a question on that then, to kind of close that off before we go to the audience questions. You talk about a vast landscape, but the HTML5 implementation across all these three software platforms is different, and it's different across a huge range of devices that are currently available today. So how does the industry conquer that problem? Because HTML5 isn't a one-size-fits-all solution yet, is it?
Well, if you're going to come back to HTML5 and not close it off, then I'd like to answer the other part first for a little bit. I thought you were going to move on to a different topic. I think anytime we talk about large and complex developer systems and massive diversity with different native app stacks in a large and complex developer system, the chance of real success is pretty low. Maybe as a very small niche market, but the chance for actual mass adoption of the third or fourth or eighth or ninth or 10th separate native app platform, I think is I wish you great luck. I mean, I hope you succeed. But to me, that seems like a challenge that is a much bigger and more difficult challenge than the, we'll say, perceived to potentially real difference between HTML and native app performance. So we've taken a different approach on those questions, and time will tell.
Could we ever expect to see the three platforms that we have represented here today working together to ensure a consistent HTML5 profile? So consistent on Sailfish, Firefox OS, and Ubuntu?
Well, the standard's so far out. That was my biggest concern. The thing,
Yeah.
having the standard for HTML5 is so far out. It's a long time from now. It was 2022 or something, the last I heard. So when is this kind of standard to be leveled? Because that was actually one of our biggest concerns. So actually, and by the way, the same thing was said about Qt, which we have people eating their fists now because Qt is actually performing and it's giving the level and the performance that wasn't expected. But
I think your question about collaboration is really, really interesting. Our perspective in terms of the addressable market for new platforms perhaps is different. Carriers tell us that 20 to 30% of their users use very few apps. And so there's a clear addressable market for a beautiful, fast, great experience, starting with that 20 to 30% of users. So being able to deliver for carriers a really exciting user experience for that segment is a great place to start, especially since we can do a great job of all the HTML5 apps as well. In terms of compatibility, I think you're right. HTML5 is more fragmented than we like to admit today. And so of necessity, we will start with WebKit, and we will work with all of the cross-platform HTML5 toolkits like PhoneGap, Enyo, and others. Make sure that people who've used those toolkits to try to write cross-platform applications, their apps just work on Ubuntu. And that's a commitment that we can make. And because we're on WebKit, and because we're working with silicon partners who have really optimized that, we can deliver, we're very confident, great performance on these amazing mobile devices for very compatible HTML5 stories. So there's hundreds of millions of devices out there will be compatible with all of them. We really support the noble goal that Telefonica and Mozilla have set, which is to say we should move that ecosystem to a more standards-based approach. But it's going to be very difficult to set a standard with just one implementation or just one set of devices and something new, a different code base.
Well, we're going to start, like,
and so,
I think it's not just one player already in the standards bodies, so we're past that, but maybe we're also past the point of useful discussion.
I think HTML5 is a topic that we could talk about for the rest of the evening, and I'm sure the audience have questions which might dig into that. But on that note, let's see if there is any Q&A directly from the audience. We have mics dotted around on both sides of the room, so we'll take some questions, and one just at the front here.
Hi, Jeff. I'm hearing from the panel that having 3 open source platforms is actually good. If 3 is good, would 5 be better? What about the views of the panel on Tizen or on WebOS as possible alternatives? Would that make the matter even richer and even better? And if 5 is good, how about 7?
So what do we think? Where's the limit going to be? How many platforms can succeed?
Well, are you a Ford guy or a Toyota guy? So how many different car choices do you need? How many different, do you like broccoli or bananas? So, I think that's not really the relevant point here. Is that, you have 2 choices at the moment, and if you're happy with one of those, that's fine. But I believe that because of those, we haven't really gotten a whole lot of new things here. So about the open source, I mean, we are all sharing code. We have a girl on our staff with a Firefox tattoo on her belly, for gosh sakes. And we have a lot of code that's shared with Ubuntu as well. And this is a great thing because people have come together and they've created those things. And I think that still providing the choice is always going to be a better thing for consumers, and it's always going to provide more opportunities for people to do something new, and most importantly for something to resonate. I keep hitting the microphone because I keep touching my heart. For something to resonate with people's hearts.
So,
Mitchell, please.
I was going to say, I think both of us could succeed. I think there's a real opportunity.
What am I doing?
What about poor old Mark on the end there?
Diversity.
I'll see your device. I'll see your device.
So devices at dawn. But I think the point is well made, that there is a limited appetite for fragmentation. And that is just going to be a tough reality, and there will be competitive pressures to essentially select for the strongest offerings. And I don't think that will take very long. But because of open source, because of HTML5, and because of our long relationship, I think the success that you wished us, we could essentially be bringing the HTML5 standards-based approach that Mozilla is leading. We could bring that to a much wider audience. And so I don't think it's quite as simple as saying that because you can get to a ridiculous proposition if you just promote diversity for the sake of it. I don't think that the opposite is also true, that there will be one and only one winner. And I think that there are good opportunities for collaboration between all of us, and we certainly would be excited about that.
And our perspective is that the web is the correct third platform. And that's why we're all in on HTML5, given it's not totally completely universal across all platforms. But if 3, why not 5, or why not 15, and so on. And so that's why we're not hedging our bets on that.
So I'll perhaps ask that question. It's an interesting question. I'll perhaps ask it slightly differently. If the web is becoming the platform, and you've got a base level of drivers that's been made available from Android, for example, is there an argument that the value is moving up through the software stack to the web, and therefore we could see even more fragmentation of the base operating system? But that's not necessarily an issue for the industry if the value is moving up the stack and you've got consistency at a runtime level, and particularly with HTML5.
Well, one of the things Mark and I have talked about a lot is the user experience, and like there's something about native performance for certain things. So, and I believe that this is going to be around for a while, because to make a device that works magically, that knows exactly what you want before you ask it, that is always there and has the things that are ready for you always available. I think that that's something that it's going to be a little while, and there's still an opportunity for these native things until this comes along.
Very good. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Yes. So we're talking about the web as the future, and you're all talking about HTML5, but I guess my question for Mitchell would be, we've already seen that there is a huge amount of people who, when they develop for the mobile web, they develop for WebKit. And it's been an issue for Windows Phone, and it has the potential to be an issue for Firefox OS, even though you do support a lot of the WebKit extensions. So if it's becoming kind of a one rendering engine world, whether that's good or bad, what does that mean if we're betting on HTML5? And I guess this could be for the whole platform, for the whole panel, but since 2 of the 3 are on WebKit, what does that really mean? I mean, if I'm building my web app and it's WebKit based, what incentive do I have to even care how it works on Firefox?
So that's part of the approach of the standards body. So, for example, the APIs that access the capabilities of the phone, right? Those are developed not just by us, but in standards bodies, and those patches are actually being picked up and used in WebKit as well. So the purpose of the whole standards process is interoperability. So I think as a developer, you know, that is actually not your particular job.
Any other thoughts from the panelists?
Well, I think it would be a problem if we had no collective strategy to essentially move to a more standards-based process. You know, de facto standards set in a code base historically has never proved satisfying for very long. I think it's important to recognize the de facto standard, but you know, also to be committed to moving things to an open standard over time. And so that's certainly what we're committed to. We think WebKit is an essential now for us, but collaboration with Mozilla and other groups and the W3C is a worthwhile investment over time.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Great. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on providing solutions for the enterprise where a personal device has personas, where you have the enterprise software running separate for the personal experience of the user and baking that into the OS level rather than leaving that up to the app developer or the MDM solution.
Mark, you mentioned the enterprise capability of Ubuntu earlier.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing for us is that Unix, Linux have a 30-year history of essentially having multi-user secure systems. And so for us, it's very natural to have a tablet, for example, where the disk is fully encrypted, the device is fully encrypted. If you leave it in a taxi, then you have no issues whatsoever with that data being available to whoever finds the device. But more importantly, that there may be multiple user accounts on that device, which are easy to switch between, but completely separated from each other, encrypted separately, and therefore you know, really secure. And in an enterprise setting, all of that can be hooked up to existing authentication frameworks, Active Directory, LDAP, and managed in an enterprise kind of way, so with key escrow. So that's a really unique proposition that I think Ubuntu does bring to the enterprise B2B market, which is certainly what operators and handset manufacturers today describe to us as their core margin-oriented market.
And Firefox OS, I think, is probably aimed at very much the other end of the market, at least initially.
Right,
but,
and our research shows that the target market that we're aiming at manages multiple personas with multiple SIMs. Right, and checks actually is much more focused on what network is this person calling me from, so that I can manage my costs. And so that's the direction that we're starting from.
It perhaps raises one further question of, you know, the issues surrounding HTML5 and JavaScript from a security standpoint, particularly when you've got low-level API access. So, I mean, what are the thoughts the panelists on that. How is that contained within the platforms that we're talking about?
You want to start?
Mark, please.
I think
You've been
malware is a
looking
real
at it.
issue. And you know, as any platform becomes successful, malware is going to become, will be more of an issue for that platform. We see that today very clearly with Android. And so for us, we think there's a great opportunity to use that bulletproof, touch wood, enterprise security that runs on servers and desktops and in very sensitive environments, to bring that to the mobile world. So to limit the opportunities for malware to gain access to sensitive information. Inside Java, potentially inside other interpreted environments, it's a more complex proposition.
Although, as browsers have been the front line of protection for malware for a decade or 15 years now. And so what we find is that our experience in protecting users is radically greater than the experience of the average app developer who hasn't needed to do this. And really, you don't want the app developers to have to learn and include security models in all of the apps that you're downloading. So our experience has been that by taking the techniques and lessons we've learned over the last couple decades about how to protect users at the operating system level, we're actually eliminating a lot of risk you find in the current app model.
It is at the core of Linux, like Mark had pointed out, that it's, and a multi-user environment is one way to solve that. But yeah, and the other thing is that we're always hearing this as well, that actually creating a business-oriented device is something that is being asked for. There's not a very good one out there at the moment. Yes, we are focusing on people at the beginning, but there's a lot of opportunity there for innovation.
Absolutely. Any other questions from the audience? Please.
Shall I stand? We've seen Android be co-opted by Amazon and many of the other lower profile manufacturers, I guess, smaller manufacturers. If you're releasing everything as open source, what stops the same thing happening to you and for your goals to be undermined by big players in the industry? How do you stop Samsung coming along and destroying or eliminating your brand name and your branding and making it almost their own?
Well, for many open source developers, being co-opted is in itself a goal. Right? We publish source code so that people will use the source code. And for us, at least, it's a great privilege to see devices made with Ubuntu, then clients, innovation essentially unlocked in things that we couldn't have accommodated ourselves or wouldn't have dreamed of ourselves. So to a certain extent, that's a privilege, not a cost. From a developer point of view, if it carries the Ubuntu brand, then developers will be able to target it, and we can say that with great certainty. And that's really the sort of assurance that we want to make to both carriers and handset manufacturers.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Leading by example is one of the things that open source communities are all about. So it's all about show me the code and about if we lead with great products and we continue to contribute, people have two options. They can make a fork, and then they're reintegrating all the time, which is exactly what happened with Android. They started to get more and more closed, and now it's not open source anymore, it's source open. So you can create whatever innovation you want, and then the next release is going to come along and kapow. It's going to break a lot of different things. So if you really want to keep this together, then you contribute, and that's where the meritocracy comes from, and that's where the commonality comes from. But people can always take a fork and do different things. But one of the things that we're trying to do, and I think I've heard this theme here today as well, is to make it so that people will want to contribute, because they will want to see and be a part of the next release exactly when it comes out, not 2 months later when they've reintegrated all of their stuff.
And Mitchell, any thoughts on how we address it?
Well, I wasn't sure. That almost sounded like a brand management question, right? There's two questions about how you keep a unified code base, which is what I think you've addressed in particular, and which we strive to do as well. But there's also the question, I think you said, of making the Android brand your own. And so management of the brand is a very critical thing. I mean, in any product, how you manage it. So we have always been very careful about the Firefox brand. And in fact, it's caused us endless difficulties with other parts of the free software community. But we manage the Firefox brand so that it means a certain set of things. And perhaps Android didn't do that in a way that made sense to you, but we certainly intend to, and I'm sure you do as well, to manage the brand to mean what we have set it out to stand for.
So with that, I'm afraid we're out of time, but I'd like to extend a big thanks to our panelists, to Mark Dillon from Jolla, Mitchell Baker from Mozilla, and Mark Shuttleworth from Canonical. And thank you to the audience for the questions.